Welcome back to The Collective Appreciation. I'm your host, Gunnar Anderson. I am a screenwriter, actor, producer, and published author living and working in Los Angeles, California. I'm also a certified personal trainer, and I'm a big action figure collector. I'm a big nerd, and I wear that badge very proudly. And those three things, the movie business, fitness and exercise, and action figure collecting, they make up what I call my collective appreciation. And if you like any of those three things, or if you're like me and you like all three, I would strongly consider subscribing. It is all we talk about. Today I'm going to give you 5 tips, 5 pieces of advice that I have picked up over my years as an action figure collector. And we are going to look at a new collection that I'm very, very excited about. If you've been collecting action figures for a while now, you may know all of these tips and all of these pieces of advice, and you may implement them on a daily basis. But there are some people that have been collecting for a long time. This is going to be brand new information to them. And for those people, maybe you can implement them. Maybe it will help you be a more focused, more responsible collector. Who knows? But if you're new to collecting, I strongly recommend watching this video. I think it would be very, very helpful. Now, I've laid these out not as mandatory rules that you must follow, but as guidelines you can follow just to be a bit more of a responsible, more well-rounded collector, and to stop yourself from slipping down that oh so slippery slope that is action figure collecting. Number 5, don't buy figures expecting to turn a profit. Buying action figures is not an investment. I'm sorry, but it's not. If you want to invest, take your money and open up a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, go to Vanguard or Fidelity. Don't buy toys hoping to sell them down the road. It's not a real investment. That being said, if you go in on a crowdfunding project, say like a HasLab, take Galactus for example. If you bought 2 Galactuses, 2 Galacti, and the reason you bought 2 was because you're going to sell the second one for double the retail price so that you can finance your own, pay for your own, that's not a bad idea. That's pretty genius actually. You just got a free Galactus. That's really good. And it's not scalping either, because if someone didn't jump on the crowdfunding while it was live, that's their fault for waiting until the aftermarket prices. That's not on you. You're not a scalper. But some figures do. They skyrocket in price, but never enough to warrant actually expecting an investment. If you buy a figure for $25 and you sell it for $100 6 months down the road, big deal. $75 isn't worth jumping in on something like that. It's not worth starting this hobby. The reward is not great enough. Plus, it's impossible to know which figures are going to gain traction like that. It's just not a good plan. Don't line jump. Line jumping is a phrase that I've coined. Maybe somebody else did, but I'm taking credit for it in this video because I thought of it. It means jumping from line to line because you see the social media buzz about it. Say you are collecting Marvel Legends and DC Multiverse, and then you stumble onto somebody's video on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or whatever talking about this latest and greatest Star Wars Black Series figure. And you decide you're going to buy that figure, and you really like it. And then you decide you need some figures to surround that figure. And then you're tempted, so you buy more. And then all of a sudden, you are now collecting Marvel Legends, DC Multiverse, and Black Series. And then the same thing happens to you with Mafex. And then the same thing happens to you with G.I. Joe Classified. And then you see the new Jada Choi's Scooby-Doo figures. And the same thing happens again. And then you see Robo talk about some cryptoids or some wild shit like that. And you are all of a sudden collecting 7 different lines with 7 different pre-orders in each line and an eBay cart filled with figures from each line. And you've totally screwed your budget. Now, I'm not saying collect only 2 lines. That's ridiculous. I'm saying have a plan. I'm saying make sure it's something that you really love and that you really value and that you feel genuinely connected to. This hobby ain't cheap, and the economy ain't getting better. We have to be selective, my friends. Number 3, do not buy outside of your budget. / make sure you have a budget. This hobby is fun, but it is a non-essential. If money is tight, this is the first thing you can cut. It is non-essential in every sense of the word. If you have bills to pay, your collecting hobby cannot take precedent over that. It cannot interfere with that. I actually use a different form of budgeting, but we'll talk about that a little later. It's my number one piece of advice. Number two, keep it fun. I touched on this in my collecting versus hoarding video, but the moment you see new reveals for a line that you're collecting, when you see new reveals drop and you have that feeling of, oh man, I really don't want to pay for that. I don't want to have to buy that. Remember, you don't have to. And that's probably a sign that your interest on the line is cooling off. This happened to me with G.I. Joe Classified. I was collecting the retro carded G.I. Joe Classified line for a while. I really, really liked it. And then all of a sudden they did a live stream and they revealed a few figures that I wasn't super crazy about. And I felt like, oh God, do I have to buy those? I'm collecting the retro carded line. Seems silly not to have all of them. And that mentality right there is super dangerous, completionist mentality. But when you have that kind of moment, take a step back. After a little bit of reflection, a little bit of time, I realized these figures are cool. There's no denying that. The G.I. Joe Classified is a really, really cool line. They're excellent figures. Very well made, very well produced, very thoughtfully produced. But that doesn't mean they're for me. You know? They didn't have that meaning to me anymore. I didn't grow up on G.I. Joe. I kind of fell into the social media thing of like, oh, these figures are incredible. And I got suckered in that way. And I did really like them. I genuinely think they're excellent figures. I think it's a really cool line. That doesn't mean I have to have them. And it was that feeling of, ooh, I have to buy this. Oh no, I have to buy this. It felt like a bill. It felt like homework. That's when you got to tap out. That's when you got to sell them. Which leads me into my number one point. Only buy as much as you've sold. I haven't paid for an action figure with my own money, meaning money that I've earned from my job or from other non-collecting streams of income, in 3 years. This is because I only buy what I've sold. If I sell $500 worth of action figures, I can then buy $500 worth of action figures. If I want $600 worth of action figures, I have to find another $100 to sell. And that's it. It keeps the collection tight. It keeps the collection fresh. It keeps it interesting. It minimizes the chance that this turns into a hoarding episode. And you're not actually playing with your own money. I mean, sure, it's your own money, but it's a self-fulfilling pool. Look, selling figures isn't going to make you a lot of money. We already talked about that. So feeding it back into the hobby just allows me to keep doing this without actually spending my own money on it. Now, of course, this means you need to start somewhere, right? If you're going to sell an action figure, you have to first buy an action figure. I understand that. But ever since I decided to sell off a big chunk of my collection, this has been the way I've done it. Now, sure, there are some drastic examples. Say you have to sell action figures because money's tight for a month and you had to sell some figures to make rent. I get that. Crazy things happen. But by and large, if you're buying action figures, you're probably making rent. But I really, really highly recommend doing this. It keeps the hobby from cutting into your actual finances and expenses and allows you to use money from your career for things like savings and investments and adult stuff. Highly, highly, highly recommend this tactic. I know a lot of people in the toy community won't agree with me because for whatever reason, but I'm sticking with my take. Only buy what you sell. You might thank me later. So now that we've talked about everything you shouldn't do as a collector, let's talk about the new line that I'm collecting. I've line jumped. I broke my own damn rule. So this weekend, I went down to Frank & Sons. It's kind of the mecca here in SoCal for collectors, and it really does live up to the hype. Like if you are an action figure collector and you have to come to LA, make sure you go to Frank & Sons. It's really, really fun. I will say some of the booths at Frank & Sons, it's like shopping on eBay. It's like being a live eBay store in the real world. The prices are unreal in a bad way. Like they're really high. But there is one booth, and I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember the name of the booth, but he sells things very, very, very reasonably. Anyways, I drove down last Sunday and I picked up these guys. The Mezco 112 Batman the Animated Series Batman and Joker. Now, each figure was $120, no shipping, no tax, in cash. That is beautiful. Now, I have opened them up. They are right here. These are absolutely excellent. They are just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful figures. I have gone back and forth on Batman the Animated Series for so many years. Really since DC Direct launched their line back in like 2014, I believe. And Batman the Animated Series is one of my favorite shows. I have a t-shirt. I have the omnibus from the comic book adaptation of Batman the Animated Series. I have the Mondo art pieces, the book of the covers. I love having some representation in my collection. But as far as action figures go, I've never been satisfied. The Kenner stuff is awesome, but they're so old, you have to be so selective with how you buy them because they could be in really, really poor condition if they've been stored the wrong way or something like that. They're 30 years old, for God's sake. And the DC Direct / McFarlane Toys stuff, I was really gung-ho about them 2 times. 2 times I have gone in on that line. And both times I've been so excited to get it, and then I have them in hand, and I set them all on my shelf or something, and it's just kind of like, oh, they're just going to stay there. They don't really move. There's not a lot to them. They're really outdated. They're really, they're well made. They're beautifully sculpted, but they are meant to just stand there. They're not fun. They're really not fun. But this is spectacular. This is, I don't know. For some reason, Batman the Animated Series lives rent-free in my head, and it has this kind of like special place in my heart where it deserves something a little bit more special. And I think this Batman, I don't have any other Mezco 112 figures. This is the only one that I have. These 2 are the only ones that I have. And I think having something unique like that, whereas all of my other figures are traditional plastic articulated figures, I think having something unique like this for Batman the Animated Series, since it is so special to me, I think that's a cool place to wind up. And I'm really excited to see what this line does. I really, really dig it. So before we wrap things up, let's dive into the pre-order spotlight. Nothing crazy. I pre-ordered the new Darth Maul, I believe it's called Shadows of Maul. It's from his new Disney Plus series that's coming out. I am building a prequel display with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. Those are the 3 heroes. And then I'll have 3 clones, Captain Rex, Commander Cody, and a regular Phase 1 clone. And then a few bad guys. I'm super excited about it. Very minimalistic, not diving into like super deep waters there with the prequel / Clone Wars stuff. Just enough to have like representation to show that I really am a Star Wars fan. Damn it. Obviously, I jumped on the Mezco 112th Robin, this Batman, and this Joker. They're too good not to see what else this line has to offer. But it doesn't ship out until early 2027. I know it says Q4, but I kind of doubt that. Then we have the Marvel Legends Secret Wars Wave 2, Absorbing Man, Daredevil, and Falcon. I will pre-order the new McFarlane Toys Page Punchers with Robin and Martian Manhunter, but people here in LA are finding them in Target, and I don't know. Maybe that'll be a fun toy hunt. Anyways, that's all for this week. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.